This debate comes down to two main issues. One is declaring specific cruel animal tests immoral scientific sufficient justification for banning all animal testing, and two, is animal testing producing results or is it a waste of animals' time and money? This is the bulk of my opponent's rebuttal. I respond as follows. First, my opponent repeatedly claims that it is inherently wrong, immoral, and that we ought not engage in animal testing practices. However, he never introduces any evidence to support the claim that all animals suffer in medical testing, or that we must torture every animal we test, and so forth. He gives a couple of extreme examples with no citation or warrant, and then tries to say all animal testing is done in this way, and because of that it is immoral. The closest he comes to evidence is a quote by Mahatma Gandhi. While I can appreciate that it comes from an important individual, it still constitutes an opinion. My opponent never says why we should consider animals equal to humans and deserve equal treatment. We kill animals all the time to save lives. We eradicate rats with poisons because they spread disease. We kill swarms of bugs, venomous snakes, and spiders to save human lives. We do all of this not out of some sort of moral deficit, but because it is necessary. Why then is it not specifically immoral to conduct necessary tests on animals to save human lives? My opponent has not answered this. I have proven through many lines of evidence that animal testing is necessary. I don't ever claim that it is moral, I claim it is needed, and my opponent has never in any word or warrant offered any proof to the contrary. Additionally, my opponent repeatedly argues that animals are capable of the same level of cognitive function as human beings, but again has failed to back this up with sufficient evidence from reputable sources. Since he has failed to prove that animals are capable of high cognitive functions, we must assume that they are not unless he manages to prove otherwise. This consequently introduces a fallacy into his argument. My opponent suggests that animal testing is equivocal to taking a random passerby off the street and conducting testing upon them. The two, however, are completely unrelated. Since animals are not capable of the higher cognitive functions that humans are, we consider the two situations are not comparable. My opponent also made the argument that inappropriate and unnecessary tests are often conducted on animals by companies such as Johnson & Johnson. He explains that most of these tests are not required by the FDA and are therefore cruel. However, these tests, as he himself points out, are not required by the government and are thus not covered within the scope of this debate. The resolution states that the United States federal government should ban all testing that requires the use of animals. Since such tests as those conducted by Johnson & Johnson are not required by the FDA, they are not topical and not relevant. This brings me to my own case. My opponent argues numerous times that I have failed to provide evidence that alternative methods of testing are inferior to those in in vivo animal testing. However, I produced evidence from Dr. Jonathan Dordick, the creator of the data chip, admitting that such methods of testing are not valid replacements for actual in vivo testing and would not be effective at assessing the effects of new treatments as would in vivo testing methods. As his proposed replacement methods of testing have been clearly shown to be insufficient substitutes for clinical animal testing, his arguments in favor of alternative methods should be dropped entirely. Also, my opponent fails to address my second contention, in which I argued that some aspects of animal testing, such as pain assessment, cannot be assessed without in vivo testing. In order to test for such effects, a switch to human testing is necessary. This is something that we cannot do, since human beings are capable of the higher cognitive function that my opponent was unable to prove that animals have. Gandhi says that we can judge a society by the way it treats its animals, but we can better judge a society by how it treats its people. Human experimentation is not tolerable in any sense, nor is tolerating death and suffering just to save animal lives. Since he has not challenged me on this point, my second contention must be flowed through. In addition, my opponent argues that we have failed to find proper alternatives for animal testing because we are content with the currently established methods. This is inaccurate. We have found alternatives, they're just not as effective as proper in vivo animal testing, as shown by my evidence from Dr. Dordick and my refutation of his Hurrell evidence, which he has dropped as well. Finally, my opponent's challenge of breakthrough medicines in the last 10 years. 1. From my case, Charles River Labs' humane animal testing trials have resulted in these breakthroughs according to AstraZeneca. Caprelsa, a breakthrough treatment in many forms of cancer. Isra, the drug for lung cancer. Oxalidines, a new class of drugs that can fight drug-resistant bugs such as tuberculosis, MRSA, and anthrax. 2. From Dr. Giovanni Guadino, creator of Gleevec, the breakthrough drug in breast cancer treatment in the last 5 years. Quote, Gleevec and its combination with other drugs have had to be first tested on animals, but Dr. Guadino and his team created a very special model. This enabled the researchers to follow the growth of reduction of the tumor in live animals by using CT imaging instead of dissection. It's quite clear that the treatment with Gleevec reduces a lot of the size of the tumors, and also increases quite remarkably the survival of the mice, end quote. The survival of the mice. These scientists are caring for the mice as if they were their patients, not destroying them, by using imaging instead of dissection. This is the new animal testing, not the torture my opponent claims is the norm. Look, don't buy the hype. Look at the facts. Look at the science. It's better, it works, and it's moral. Thank you.